Hey everybody, so it's time for me to do my May wrap up. I read some fantastic books in the month of May, and I cannot wait to tell you all about them. So let's get started. Hi everybody and welcome back to my channel. It's Russell with Ink and Paper Blog. How are you all doing today? As always, I hope you're happy, I hope you're healthy, I hope you're safe, and of course, I hope you're reading an amazing book or two or three or four. I know I am. I am just loving reading right now. So many good books out there, and I cannot wait to tell you about the books that I read in May. All of them so very, very good. So as always, get out your pen, get out your paper, get out your Goodreads, however you keep track of your TBR. If you are so able, please order these books from your local independent bookstore. As you know, they need us now, as they always need us, right? Because we need to support them. Or if you're a library user, get your library to get you a copy as soon as possible. The first book, you know, I'm trying to start these monthly wrap-ups with the book that I liked most from the year. This was a tough month because I read some fantastic books. But the winner of that very, very tight race was The Late Americans by Brandon Taylor. I have talked about this book on my channel a few times. I have a whole video with Ryan, but Brandon Taylor has become one of my go-to favorite authors writing today. This is his third novel. I've read both of his novels and his short story collection. Absolutely adore him. This is a book about a group of friends in Iowa City in graduate school. It deals with queerness, it deals with love, it deals with relationships, it deals with economics, it deals with societal ideas of relationships, it deals with art and dance and poetry, and it is complicated, and in its core, it is about people. And Brandon Taylor does better than almost anyone creating people and senses of being. His books don't always have like a big arc of plot, but what they do have is a sense of place, a sense of time, a sense of purpose as far as what he is trying to do with the people he creates. I loved it. I think it's brilliant. I think everything he writes is brilliant. So please read The Late Americans, Brandon Taylor, out from Riverhead Books. Okay. Next is another book I've talked about in my Pride video, which just came up, but this is the official review of The Celebrants by Stephen Rowley. This is a lovely book. I love everything Stephen Rowley has written, to be honest with you. And this is the story of a group of friends that come together at the very beginning to celebrate the life of one of their friends who has taken their life. That makes sense, right? And they recognize at this moment that they wish they could have told him how much they loved him and everything they loved about him. And maybe that would have made him change his mind on the decisions that he's made. So what they do is they create this pact that at any time that they need it, they can sort of call their own funeral, and everybody will come together and sort of support them through whatever they're going through. So there's divorce, there's the loss of parents, there's issues with the law, and there's all sorts of stuff. And it's all about this friendship group and sort of how they come together for one another when they are needed, and even support each other when they're not. And I will tell you, this book is funny. There are some really funny parts to it. I am obsessed with the Courtney scale. I'm not going to spoil it for you, but just know that there is a scale that they rank things on based on Courtney Cox, Courtney Cox, Courtney Love, and Courtney Thorne Smith, that I thought was hilarious. There is a hilarious skydiving scene, but mostly I cried a lot. And at the end, I sobbed. So I absolutely loved The Celebrants by Stephen Rowley out from Putnam. Thank you to Putnam and Riverhead for sending me those beautiful finished copies. A book that I want to make sure is on more people's radars that I absolutely adored out from Europa is The Road to Dalton. This is by Shannon Bowring. And this is for those of you who like books about the entire conglomeration of a small town. So I would say, for me, this book is sort of like a combination of a Richard Russo novel with a little bit of Elizabeth Strout's Olive Kittredge thing. So it's not quite like collected short stories that all connect. It's definitely more of a novel, but it has that sense of place of Kittredge, but it's a little darker, like Rousseau. This is the story of a small town in Maine where we meet a variety of characters, from two housewives that are not so secretly in love with one another. Their one husband definitely knows, the other one probably knows, and their relationships with the town. There is a young couple. The husband is a new police officer. The wife has just had a baby, and she is dealing with some pretty significant postpartum depression. And there's so much. There's so many characters I cannot tell you. But what Shannon does so well is create this little town. I think I was at Rakeshaw Books, and one of the people who works there was recommending this book. And I think what he said was, it's about that idea of the quintessential perfect small town. But when you really look below that town, it's the secrets and the tragedy and everything that's sort of not talked about that really builds the character of that town. And that's what Shannon does for Dalton in The Road to Dalton, out from Europa Editions. And I adored this book. Please read it. I think you will really love it. Okay. Next was, as you all know, every month I have a book that I read with my husband. That was his request at the start of the year. And they are usually spooky, horror, sort of thriller-y type of things. That's sort of his MO. And so last month we read My Best Friend's Exorcism by Grady Hendrix. We had just read another book by Grady Hendrix, which my husband really liked. So he said, let's read another one. This is exactly what it is. It's about a group of teenage girls, and one of them becomes possessed, and there's an exorcism. That is what it is. And there's a lot about this. This deals a lot with sort of teenage angst and teenage ire against one another, the things that they will do and say to each other. And in the end, it's about one's friend's dedication to save her other friend from the darkness that has overtaken her life. It was good. It was really good. I did like the Southern Book Club's Guide to Vampire Slaying better, but this book is enjoyable. The pages turn. There's a lot of stuff in it. It's a little bit darker, I feel, than the other book, though the other book ends a little bit more gruesome. So all of that. But if you like that type of stuff, I highly recommend it. I enjoyed it. He enjoyed it. We really did like it. So that's My Best Friend's Exorcism by Grady Hendrix. This is out from Quirk Books. I love Quirk Books. If you don't know them, please support them. Highly recommend them greatly. So the next book, I'm actually going to have my husband put a picture here, because I actually read this on my Kindle. And that is Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros. And the reason I read this, so I was traveling for work. I brought one book, and I had quite a bit of it left. So I thought, I'm only gone for a few nights. I will take this one book, and that will be enough. I don't need to pack my suitcase with a bunch of books. Well, I finished the book that I was supposed to be reading on basically the first night I was there, because I read most of it on the plane, and then I finished it that night in the hotel. I had my Kindle with me, this is my Kindle, if you ever want to see it. So I was on Instagram thinking, what am I going to do? I cannot be here 2 or 3 more nights and not have a book. And Fourth Wing was everywhere. Everyone was talking about it. It was all over Instagram. And I was like, you know what? I'll just buy it and we'll see what happens. And I was obsessed. I read it in the next 2 nights that I was there on my trip, and I was done with it. So what is The Fourth Wing? I'm going to say, I think this is classified as a YA novel. I will tell you why I don't think it's completely for children in just a minute. But it is the story of a young girl who lives in a time where there's magic and all that kind of stuff. And there are 4 schools that you can sort of dedicate yourself to if you so wish. And one of them is like the scribe school that does history and takes down all of the notes of everything that's going on in this kingdom. There is a healing one. There's another one which I can't remember. And then there's the dragon school, where you go and you fight to try to be chosen by a dragon to defend the kingdom. Because we find out very soon that the kingdom sort of is guarded by the magic of these dragons, and people are trying to get in, and that you become part of the army that defends this country, or this you know what I mean. You know what I mean. And our main character thought she was going to be a scribe. That's what she's been doing her whole life. Her father was a scribe, and she thought she was going to go. She's always been reading and studying history. Her mother, who is sort of in charge of the whole entire dragon shebang, decides right before she's supposed to be chosen that she's actually going to go and try to become a dragon rider. And the reason this is so sort of life-changing is a lot of people die in their pursuit of becoming a dragon rider. And she, our main character, is slim, she's small, and she's just not physically strong enough on the outside, right, to become this. And what happens is she winds up making past the first hurdle, and we find out that there's so much intrigue going on. People want to kill her. People are very competitive, and you have to go through all of this schooling to then possibly be chosen by a dragon. This book is so good. Like, the pages just turn. You are totally invested. And I apologize. I was trying to figure out if I could remember the name of the main character, because you know I'm terrible at names. And let me see. It doesn't help me. Of course it doesn't help me. I'm not good at going through things on my character, but she is smart, and and she figures things out, and she gets great friends. And this book has some queer representation in it. It's really just about how hard you're going to fight to reach whatever goal you set for yourself. It's a lot about other people trying to force their opinions on you. The main character has a best friend. He is constantly trying to get her to leave because he's fearing for her life. Instead of supporting her, he's really getting in her way. I don't want to give too much away because there's a lot that goes on in this book, and I don't want to give any spoilers because I knew nothing about it other than it was on Instagram, and I absolutely loved it. Now, here's my caveat. I think this is sort of being billed as a YA book. The book, about 3/4 of the way through, I guess, there is a romance and a relationship, and there becomes a couple of sex scenes that I thought were a little bit much. I was like, I don't know that they added to the overall narrative. I don't know that they were necessary at all. And I had recommended this book to a friend of mine who has teenage girls that like to read. And I was like, oh, I'm reading this book. I love it. I love the strong female lead. I think you'll love it. But when I got to those parts, I was like, oh no, I can't recommend this to your children anymore. I don't know that it's appropriate for, you know, and it may be. Your readers may be able to handle it. That may be fine. To me, I just thought it was a little bit over the top. I didn't think it was necessary in the whole thing. Will I read the second one of this series? Absolutely. I am invested. I think the story is great. I think the world building is great. I think the main character is fantastic. And I apologize that I am blanking on her name, but please read The Fourth Wing. It's just Fourth Wing, I think, by Rebecca Yarros. It's the Empyrean book 1, and the second one I think comes out in November, if I'm not mistaken. I will be first in line. I absolutely loved it. I went to actually buy the book at Barnes & Noble because I just happened to be there. Completely sold out. Completely sold out there, completely sold out at the warehouse. There was no way I was going to get myself a copy. So it's on my Kindle, and I can't wait to read book 2. Okay, so from YA Dragon School, we're going to go to very different, very, very different world. And that's The Lost Wife by Susana Moore. This is also out from Knopf. And this takes place in 1855 Minnesota territory. We have a woman. She is actually in Rhode Island, I believe, at the start of the book. She's in a marriage, not a great marriage. She has a young child, and she is unhappy. And so she decides to leave. She leaves her husband, leaves her child, and goes to the Minnesota territory based upon a letter that's a few years old from a woman she knew when she was younger, who sort of talks about the Minnesota territory and everything that can happen for women in that time, in that place. Yeah. So she goes there. She goes searching for a friend, finds out very soon that her friend actually passed away from illness, and she's got to figure out what to do. And she winds up marrying a doctor who has his own shady past. They don't know each other's shady past, but they both sort of know they're keeping secrets. They start a family. He winds up moving out into a reservation type area where he is involved. I want to say, the Sioux tribes. They become very integrated into the Native American groups, the Sioux Indians. God, why am I struggling with that? But they become, and then things happen, and her husband winds up going away, and she becomes sort of part of this community, and they save her many a times from harm. And then things happen. I'm not going to give it too much. It's based upon a historical event. I don't know that I did a great job of selling this book. I apologize. I sort of tripped over a bit of stuff there. But if you like historical fiction, if you like things set in the 1800s in the Midwest, sort of that getting by, doing everything you can to get by with the land, the people, the world, and then, you know, some stuff happens. I highly recommend it. I really liked it. The Lost Wife by Susana Moore, out from Knopf. So I apologize. That was not my smoothest review there. Last but not least is probably the book that would have been my favorite read of the month had I not read The Late Americans right at the end of the month. And that is the absolutely brilliant Yellowface by R.F. Kuang. This is out from William Morrow, and this book is fantastic. So, this is the story of two women. We have June and Athena. They both go to school together. They both go to graduate school. They're both going to be authors. Now, Athena Liu takes off after college. She has a number of books that do very, very well. She's nominated for all these awards. She has her own voice. June publishes a book. It doesn't do very well. And they have a very weird sort of friendship. Athena seems to have some social anxiety issues. Like, she doesn't really interact with people well. June is envious of all of Athena's success. That's the word I was looking for, success. One night they're together, they are drinking, and they're at Athena's house. And this is no spoiler, y'all, because it happens very soon in the beginning of the book. Athena dies, and June steals the manuscript of Athena's newest book, which she has just finished, from her desk after she calls the paramedics, and she takes this book home, and that's where the book starts. June then decides to finish the book for Athena and winds up publishing it under her own name as her own book. And what is fascinating is a couple things. This is about a white woman taking the words of an Asian woman and a very Asian story and trying to turn it into her own story. Two, what you wind up happening as sort of it goes through the editorial process, and as the book is sold to a big publisher and you sort of see everything, you see the whitewashing of this book occurring, not only by June, but also by the publishing industry, taking out the things that would make it uncomfortable. And that to me was just brilliantly done. And it's about June really constantly creating excuses for what she has done, and then people start to sort of think that there's something weird, and she starts to get feedback, and people sort of in the beginning thinks it's jealousy, like people are jealous of her success, but then people really start to notice that this book is very much Athena. And then what does June, and what is June willing to do? And then she publishes another book, and I will leave it there. This is like a literary thriller in a lot of ways. It talks a lot about publishing. It talks a lot about the ideas of stealing another's identity. And it talks about making things more comfortable for the general reader, which I thought was very fascinating done. My only problem with this book, and it's a small caveat, is that a number of chapters end with June saying, "I thought everything was going to be okay, but it wasn't." And I just got that sort of trope got a little bit annoying for me. But other than that, I thought it was absolutely fantastic. I was turning the pages. I wanted to know how it was all going to wind up in the end. It is so good, y'all. I have read The Poppy War and I have read Babel by R.F. Kuang. I loved The Poppy War. Babel, I liked about 2/3 of it, and then I got a little bit lost, which happens. You know, not every book is meant for every reader. This, to me, is her masterpiece. It is heads above those two books, and yeah, it is. This is a great book for a group to read together and discuss it. It tackles so many things in the world. It is so very, very good. So that's Yellowface by R.F. Kuang. And so that is what I read. I think I read a lot of really, really good books. Let's see if I can hold these up here for you, other than the Kindle for Fourth Wing. As always, if you're a return subscriber, I could not do this without you. Thank you so very, very much. If you are new to my channel, I hope that you hit the subscribe button. Hopefully I sold you on those books. I'm sorry about The Lost Wife. I did not do that book justice, but trust me, you want to read it. As always, I encourage you to read globally, shop locally, and until next time, I wish you happy reading. Bye, everybody.